Welcome back. Tonight, let's explore one of the most overlooked stories in human history. It is not the story of kings, emperors, or great battles. It is not the story of famous explorers crossing oceans or mighty armies marching across continents. Instead, it is the story of something far more ordinary. Something so common that most of us rarely think about it at all. Tonight, we explore the forgotten history of toilets in ancient America. At first, this may seem like a strange topic. After all, toilets are rarely discussed in history classes. When people imagine ancient civilizations, they picture temples, pyramids, warriors, rulers, and monuments. They imagine great cities rising from forests and deserts. They imagine dramatic moments that change the course of history. Very few people stop to wonder where ancient people went to the bathroom. Yet every civilization had to answer that question. Every village, every town, every city, every person. For thousands of years, human beings faced the same challenge. How do you keep a community clean when hundreds or even thousands of people live together? It may not sound glamorous, but throughout history, the answer to that question often determined whether a settlement flourished or failed. Clean water mattered. Clean streets mattered. Proper waste disposal mattered. Long before scientists understood bacteria or disease, people noticed patterns. Communities with cleaner water often experienced fewer illnesses. Places where waste accumulated became unpleasant and unhealthy. Observation taught lessons long before science could explain them. As a result, civilizations across the world developed surprisingly creative solutions. Some dug drainage channels. Some created designated disposal areas. Some built complex water systems that still impress engineers today. Others relied on simple but effective routines passed down through generations. These systems rarely appear in popular documentaries. Visitors admire pyramids. Tourists photograph temples. History books celebrate rulers and warriors. Yet hidden beneath every successful city was an invisible network of practical solutions that allowed daily life to continue. The history of sanitation is therefore a hidden history. A quiet history. A history of ordinary people performing ordinary tasks. And because it was ordinary, it often became invisible. Imagine visiting a great city centuries ago. You might notice magnificent architecture. You might admire markets filled with food and goods. You might hear musicians performing in public spaces. What you probably would not notice is the countless efforts required to keep that city functioning. Someone collected water. Someone maintained drainage systems. Someone cleaned streets. Someone organized waste disposal. Without those tasks, the city could not survive. The larger a settlement became, the more important these responsibilities became. A small camp might leave little trace upon the landscape. A city containing tens of thousands of people faced entirely different challenges. And nowhere is this more fascinating than in the civilizations of ancient America. Long before modern plumbing, indigenous peoples across North, Central, and South America developed diverse approaches to sanitation and cleanliness. These approaches reflected local environments. Mountain communities faced different challenges than coastal settlements. Desert villages required different solutions than tropical cities. Each culture adapted in its own way. Some relied upon carefully planned settlements. Others developed remarkable water management systems. Many placed strong emphasis upon personal cleanliness. What makes this story especially interesting is that many ancient American societies developed sophisticated sanitation practices without access to technologies that modern people often take for granted. There were no electric pumps, no modern sewage treatment plants, no indoor plumbing, no flush toilets. Yet many communities remained surprisingly organized and remarkably clean. In some cases, visitors from Europe were astonished by what they encountered. Cities that seemed orderly, public spaces that appeared well maintained, water systems that functioned efficiently, standards of cleanliness that challenged European assumptions. As we move through this story, we will encounter villages carved into cliffs, cities rising from tropical forests, mountain settlements connected by stone roads, bustling marketplaces filled with thousands of people. Each place faced the same fundamental challenge. How do large groups of human beings live together comfortably? The answer was rarely simple. It required planning, cooperation, observation, and countless small routines repeated day after day. The people who carried out these tasks rarely became famous. History seldom records the names of those who cleaned streets, maintained drainage systems, or managed everyday sanitation. Yet their work was essential. Without them, cities could not function. Without them, daily life would become far more difficult. In many ways, the story we are about to explore is not really about toilets at all. It is about civilization. It is about how ordinary people solved ordinary problems. It is about the hidden systems that supported everyday life. And perhaps that is what makes it so fascinating. Because beneath every great achievement in history lies a foundation of practical work. People needed food. People needed water. People needed shelter. And people needed clean places to live. Tonight, we will follow that story across centuries and continents. We will explore ancient villages, growing towns, and magnificent cities. We will discover how different cultures approach cleanliness and sanitation. And along the way, we may gain a new appreciation for something most of us rarely think about at all. So settle in. Get comfortable. Allow the noise of the modern world to fade into the distance. And let us begin our journey into the forgotten history of toilets in ancient America. As we continue our journey, we must travel far back in time. Long before great cities rose from the forests of Central America. Long before stone roads crossed mountains. Long before pyramids dominated the horizon. There were only small groups of people moving across vast landscapes. For thousands of years, the ancestors of indigenous peoples throughout the Americas lived as hunter-gatherers. Their world was very different from our own. There were no permanent towns, no crowded neighborhoods, no busy marketplaces. Instead, small communities moved with the seasons. They followed migrating animals. They searched for fresh water. They gathered fruits, nuts, roots, and other resources that nature provided. Life was closely connected to the land. Because these groups were relatively small, many of the sanitation problems that later challenged cities simply did not exist. A camp containing 20 or 30 people placed far less pressure on the environment than a city containing thousands. If a location became less suitable, people could move elsewhere. The landscape itself helped absorb and recycle waste naturally. In a sense, mobility served as an early sanitation system. When people stayed only briefly in one location, waste rarely accumulated to dangerous levels. Nature had time to recover. Rainfall, sunlight, insects, plants, and microorganisms gradually returned the area to balance. This does not mean life was easy. Far from it. Survival required constant effort. Every day involved gathering food, finding water, maintaining tools, and protecting family members from environmental dangers. Yet these communities developed practical habits that helped maintain clean living spaces. Archaeological evidence suggests that many early settlements separated different activities into distinct areas. Cooking might occur in one location, sleeping in another, waste disposal farther away. Such arrangements may seem obvious today, but they demonstrate an important understanding. People recognize that some activities should remain separate from others. Clean spaces were valued. Water sources were protected whenever possible. These habits were not written down in books. They were passed from generation to generation through observation and experience. A child watching older community members learned where to gather water, where to prepare food, where to dispose of waste. Knowledge accumulated slowly across centuries. The environment also influenced daily practices. In colder northern regions, people faced different challenges than those living in tropical forests or desert landscapes. Each environment required adaptation. Each landscape encouraged different solutions. Along rivers, communities often relied upon flowing water to carry away waste naturally. In dry regions, greater care was necessary to avoid contaminating precious water supplies. Every decision mattered. Water was life. Without reliable water, settlements could not survive. This reality encouraged careful planning even among relatively small communities. As centuries passed, some groups began spending longer periods in certain locations. The reasons varied. Reliable food sources encouraged settlement. Favorable climates provided stability. Rivers offered transportation and water. Gradually, temporary camps became seasonal villages. Seasonal villages sometimes became permanent communities. This transition represented one of the most important developments in human history. For the first time, people began living together in larger numbers for extended periods. Permanent homes appeared. Storage systems developed. Agriculture slowly emerged in many regions. Population increased. And with growing populations came new challenges. A small traveling group could leave problems behind. A permanent village could not. Waste accumulated. Water sources required protection. Living spaces demanded maintenance. Communities needed rules and routines. These changes happened gradually. No single moment marked the beginning of village life. Instead, countless generations contributed small improvements. A better storage method here. A more reliable water source there. A more organized settlement layout somewhere else. Over time, these improvements transformed daily life. The first villages of ancient America were not enormous. Most were modest communities. People still lived closely connected to nature. They still depended upon local resources. But the foundations of future civilizations were beginning to appear. With permanence came responsibility. Maintaining a village required cooperation. Everyone depended upon shared resources. If a water source became contaminated, the entire community suffered. If waste accumulated too close to homes, unpleasant conditions developed. Practical solutions became increasingly important. Many of these early innovations left few traces in the archaeological record. Stone temples survive for centuries. Wooden structures often disappear. Everyday routines vanish even more easily. Yet their importance should not be underestimated. The future cities of the Americas would eventually depend upon lessons learned in these early villages. Knowledge about water. Knowledge about cleanliness. Knowledge about organizing community life. These lessons formed the foundation upon which larger societies would later build. As populations continued to grow, villages became more complex. New forms of leadership emerged. Agriculture expanded. Trade networks developed. Communities interacted more frequently with one another. The story of sanitation was becoming more complicated. Simple solutions that worked for small groups no longer worked as populations increased. People would need new ideas, new systems, new ways of managing daily life. And in the centuries ahead, some societies would create solutions so effective that they continue to impress historians and archaeologists today. But those remarkable achievements all began here. In small villages, beside rivers and forests, among ordinary people solving ordinary problems. Problems that every human community, regardless of time or place, eventually had to face. And as these villages grew larger, the next chapter of our story begins. The rise of permanent settlements across ancient America. As the centuries passed, life in the Americas slowly began to change. Small groups that had once traveled constantly across the landscape started spending more time in particular places. The change was gradual. So gradual, in fact, that no one living through it would have recognized it as a historic transformation. Each generation simply adapted to new circumstances. A fertile valley encouraged longer stays. A reliable river provided fresh water throughout the year. A successful harvest made it possible to remain in one place instead of moving with the seasons. Little by little, temporary camps evolved into permanent settlements. For the people living there, permanence brought many advantages. Homes could be built more carefully. Food could be stored for future use. Fields could be cultivated year after year. Communities could grow. Children could be raised in familiar surroundings. Knowledge could be passed down through generations without interruption. Yet permanence also created challenges that earlier hunter-gatherers rarely faced. One of those challenges involved cleanliness. When a small group remained in one location for only a short time, nature had little difficulty absorbing the effects of human activity. But when dozens or even hundreds of people lived together year after year, the situation changed dramatically. The community itself became part of the environment. Its choices began shaping the landscape around it. Water sources became especially important. A river or spring that supplied drinking water had to remain clean. Contamination could affect everyone. Without realizing it, many communities were beginning to practice early forms of public health. Not because they understood bacteria or microscopic organisms, but because experience taught them valuable lessons. People noticed patterns. When water became dirty, illness sometimes followed. When waste accumulated too close to homes, conditions became unpleasant. When living spaces were neglected, life became more difficult. Observation encouraged action, and action led to organization. Some of the earliest permanent settlements in the Americas were surprisingly thoughtful in their layout. Homes were grouped together. Shared spaces emerged. Certain activities took place in designated locations. Although archaeologists cannot always determine every detail of daily sanitation practices, evidence suggests that many communities understood the value of separating living areas from waste disposal areas. This separation was simple, yet it represented an important step forward. Communities were beginning to think collectively. Instead of focusing only on individual households, people increasingly considered the needs of the settlement as a whole. What benefited one family often benefited everyone. A cleaner water source helped the entire village. A well-maintained pathway improved daily life for all residents. The idea of shared responsibility slowly became part of community life. Agriculture accelerated these changes. As farming became more important, settlements became more stable. Fields required attention throughout the year. Storage buildings protected valuable harvests. Population increased. Some villages that began as small clusters of homes gradually expanded into larger communities. Children grew into adults. New families formed. Additional homes appeared. Generation after generation contributed to the growth of the settlement. With every increase in population, the need for organization became greater. Paths turned into streets. Open spaces became gathering areas. Rules and customs developed. People learned where certain activities should take place. These customs were rarely written down. Instead, they became part of everyday life. Everyone understood them because everyone participated in them. A visitor arriving from another region might notice that a village appeared orderly. The arrangement of homes made sense. Water collection followed familiar routines. Shared spaces remained functional. Such organization did not happen by accident. It emerged through countless small decisions made over many years. One practical concern involved rainfall. In many regions of the Americas, seasonal storms could transform a peaceful settlement into a muddy landscape. Communities learned to pay attention to drainage. Water needed somewhere to go. Without proper drainage, pathways became difficult to use. Homes could be damaged. Stored food could be threatened. Simple channels and carefully chosen settlement locations help reduce these risks. Again, these solutions may seem ordinary. But ordinary solutions often have extraordinary importance. History tends to celebrate dramatic achievements. Massive temples, towering monuments, famous leaders. Yet the success of a settlement often depended far more upon practical concerns. Access to water, storage of food, management of waste, protection from flooding. These quiet achievements rarely attract attention, but they determine whether communities thrive. As settlements continued growing throughout ancient America, some regions developed especially sophisticated approaches to community planning. Among the most fascinating examples were the societies of the American Southwest. In landscapes shaped by deserts, cliffs, and rugged terrain, communities faced unique challenges. Water was precious. Resources had to be managed carefully. Cooperation was essential. Over time, these conditions encouraged remarkable innovation. people built settlements adapted to difficult environments. They developed systems that balanced the needs of growing populations with the realities of the landscape around them. These communities would eventually become some of the most impressive examples of organized living in ancient North America. And it is there, among the cliffs, mesas, and desert plateaus of the Southwest, that the next chapter of our story unfolds. For it is among the Pueblo peoples that we begin to see community organization reaching an entirely new level. A level that would shape daily life for centuries, and reveal just how carefully ancient societies thought about the practical challenges of living together. As we leave behind the earliest permanent villages, our journey brings us to one of the most fascinating regions in ancient North America. The American Southwest. Today, this landscape is known for its deserts, rocky mesas, vast open skies, and dramatic cliffs. It is a place of beauty. But it is also a place where survival has always required careful planning. Rainfall can be unpredictable. Rivers are often seasonal. Water is precious. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples adapted to these conditions with remarkable skill. Among them were the ancestors of the Pueblo peoples. Over many centuries, they built communities that blended naturally into the landscape around them. Some settlements stood upon mesas. Others occupied valleys. Still others were constructed within sheltered cliff walls, creating homes that remain impressive even today. To modern visitors, these settlements often appear mysterious. Stone rooms stacked upon one another. Narrow passageways. Small windows. Carefully planned layouts. Yet for the people who lived there, these were simply homes. Places where families cooked meals, raised children, stored food, and carried out countless daily routines. Like every community in history, they also faced practical challenges. Among those challenges was the need to maintain clean and healthy living conditions. Water shaped nearly every aspect of Pueblo life. Communities often developed near reliable sources of water. Rainfall was collected whenever possible. Knowledge of local springs and seasonal streams was extremely valuable. Every drop mattered. Because water was so important, protecting it became a shared responsibility. Contaminating a valuable water source could affect an entire settlement. This encouraged careful habits and community cooperation. Archaeologists studying ancient Pueblo sites have found evidence of thoughtful planning. Living areas were organized. Storage rooms protected valuable food supplies. Public spaces served community functions. The arrangement of buildings often reflected practical concerns as much as cultural traditions. Many settlements were designed to make efficient use of available space. Stone walls provided protection from weather. Compact layouts conserved resources. Shared areas encouraged cooperation among residents. Daily life required effort. Before sunrise, many people began their routines. Water might need to be collected. Food prepared. Tools repaired. Fields maintained. Children helped with age-appropriate tasks while learning the skills necessary for adult life. Nothing was wasted. In an environment where resources could be limited, careful management was essential. This practical mindset extended to sanitation as well. Although ancient Pueblo communities did not possess modern plumbing systems, they understood the importance of keeping living spaces functional and organized. Activities were often separated according to purpose. Areas used for food preparation remained distinct from other activities. Storage spaces were protected. Waste was managed in ways that minimized disruption to daily life. Such practices may seem simple, yet they demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of community living. A settlement containing dozens or even hundreds of people required cooperation. Everyone benefited when shared spaces remained clean and usable. The architecture of Pueblo communities also contributed to daily comfort. Thick stone and adobe walls helped regulate temperature. During hot days, interiors remained relatively cool. During cold nights, stored heat provided some warmth. This natural climate control made life more comfortable throughout the year. Many homes contained hearths that provided warmth and served as gathering places. Families cooked meals over open fires. Stories were shared. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next. The home was not simply a shelter. It was the center of daily life. Outside, community activities continued. Fields required attention. Trade connected settlements across considerable distances. Ceremonies reinforced social bonds. The success of the community depended upon cooperation. No individual could accomplish. As we continue our journey through the ancient Southwest, let us slow down and imagine a typical day in a Pueblo town. The sun has not yet risen above the distant mesas. The air is cool. A faint glow appears along the horizon as darkness slowly begins to retreat. Inside stone and adobe homes, families are beginning to wake. Fires that burned through the night are stirred back to life. A few glowing embers become flickering flames once again. Soon the scent of smoke drifts gently into the morning air. For the people of these communities, daily life followed rhythms that had been practiced for generations. There were fields to tend, water to collect, meals to prepare, tools to repair, children to teach. Every day brought familiar responsibilities, and every responsibility played a role in maintaining the health and stability of the community. Water was among the most valuable resources. In many Pueblo settlements, obtaining water required effort. Some families walked to nearby springs. Others traveled to streams or seasonal water sources. Containers made from clay allowed water to be carried back to homes. This task often became part of daily life. Trips to collect water were not unusual events. They were routine. Yet these routines carried great importance. Without clean water, cooking became difficult. Cleaning became difficult. Life itself became difficult. As a result, communities developed strong traditions surrounding water use and conservation. Wastefulness was discouraged. Every drop mattered. The precious nature of water also influenced cleanliness. Modern people often imagine ancient communities as dirty places. In reality, many ancient societies valued cleanliness highly. Not because they understood modern medicine, but because practical experience taught useful lessons. Clean spaces were more comfortable. Clean storage areas protected food. Clean water sources supported healthy communities. These observations were simple but powerful. Within Pueblo settlements, daily tasks helped maintain order. Homes were swept. Food preparation areas were kept organized. Storage rooms were monitored carefully. Even seemingly small efforts contributed to the overall well-being of the community. Archaeologists studying these settlements often remark upon their organized nature. Rooms served specific purposes. Pathways connected important areas. Community spaces were maintained. The settlement functioned as a living system. Every person contributed in some way. Children learned these responsibilities early. Education did not take place in formal classrooms. Instead, knowledge was woven into daily life. Young people learned by observing parents, grandparents, and other members of the community. They watched how food was prepared, how water was carried, how homes were maintained, how resources were respected. Over time, these lessons became habits, and habits became traditions. One important feature of Pueblo life was cooperation. Many activities were easier when performed together. Families shared labor. Neighbors assisted one another. Large projects often required collective effort. This cooperative spirit helped communities thrive in challenging environments. It also helped solve practical problems. Maintaining pathways, protecting water supplies, managing shared spaces. All required cooperation. No single household could accomplish everything alone. As settlements grew larger, these shared responsibilities became increasingly important. Markets and trade also played a role in daily life. People exchanged goods across considerable distances. Pottery, food, tools, textiles, and other items moved between communities. Travelers brought news and information. Ideas spread along trade routes. The Southwest was far more connected than many people realize. This exchange of knowledge likely influenced practical matters as well. Successful techniques spread. Communities learned from one another. Experience accumulated over generations. Meanwhile, life continued at a steady pace. Meals were prepared. Children played. Stories were told. Ceremonies marked important moments. The ordinary routines of life unfolded day after day. And it is often these ordinary details that reveal the most about the past. Great monuments tell us what societies built. Everyday habits tell us how people lived. In the evening, families gathered once again. The heat of the day slowly faded. The sky darkened. Stars appeared overhead. Fires provided warmth and light. Conversations filled the air. Perhaps stories were shared about ancestors. Perhaps plans were discussed for the coming day. Much about these moments remains unknown. Yet some experiences are timeless. Families gathering together. Communities supporting one another. People finding comfort in familiar routines. These experiences connect us across centuries. The Pueblo world was not perfect. Life could be difficult. Droughts occurred. Resources sometimes became scarce. Challenges demanded adaptation. Yet the persistence of these communities demonstrates their remarkable resilience. For generations, they maintained settlements in environments that required intelligence, cooperation, and careful planning. Their success depended not upon grand inventions. It depended upon countless practical decisions repeated day after day. Decisions about water. Decisions about food. Decisions about cleanliness and community life. As our journey continues, we will leave the dry landscapes of the Southwest and travel southward. There, hidden within dense tropical forests, another civilization was building cities on an entirely different scale. The Maya. Their urban centers would eventually contain thousands of people. Managing water, sanitation, and daily life within such cities required extraordinary ingenuity. And it is there that the next chapter of our story begins. A story of reservoirs, plazas, temples, and some of the most fascinating cities in the ancient Americas. As we leave behind the deserts and mesas of the American Southwest, our journey takes us far to the south. The landscape changes dramatically. The dry air of the Southwest gives way to dense tropical forests. Towering trees stretch toward the sky. Colorful birds move through the canopy. The sounds of insects fill the warm air. Hidden within these forests, ancient cities once flourished. These were the cities of the Maya. Today, many people recognize the Maya for their impressive pyramids, sophisticated calendars, and remarkable achievements in mathematics and astronomy. Yet beneath these famous accomplishments lay another challenge. A challenge that every city must face. How do thousands of people live together while maintaining access to clean water and healthy living conditions? For the Maya, this question was especially important. Many Maya cities were built in regions without large rivers flowing directly through them. Unlike civilizations that settled beside major waterways, the Maya often relied upon seasonal rainfall. This meant that water management became one of the most important responsibilities within their society. Rain arrived during certain parts of the year. During other months, water could become scarce. Communities needed ways to collect, store, and protect this precious resource. Over time, the Maya developed impressive solutions. Reservoirs were constructed to capture rainwater. Channels directed water where it was needed. Storage systems helped communities survive dry seasons. These innovations allowed cities to grow far larger than would otherwise have been possible. Imagine approaching a major Maya city centuries ago. As you emerge from the forest, enormous stone structures rise before you. Pyramids dominate the skyline. Public plazas stretch across the city center. Temples stand proudly above surrounding buildings. Thousands of people move through streets and gathering places. Merchants sell goods. Craftsmen work on projects. Families carry out daily routines. The city feels alive. Yet beneath this activity lies an invisible challenge. Every person needs water. Every household produces waste. Every community requires organization. The larger the city becomes, the greater these challenges grow. A village might contain a few hundred residents. Some Maya cities contained many thousands. Managing daily life required careful planning. Water remained at the center of everything. People needed water for drinking. They needed it for cooking. They needed it for cleaning. Agriculture depended upon it. Religious ceremonies often involved it. Protecting water supplies therefore became essential. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of extensive water management systems throughout the Maya world. Some cities constructed large reservoirs lined with materials designed to reduce water loss. Others created channels that helped direct rainfall into storage areas. These systems reflected generations of accumulated knowledge. The Maya understood their environment well. They knew when rain would likely arrive. They knew how water moved across the landscape. They understood the importance of preparation. Without effective planning, entire communities could suffer. The challenge was not simply collecting water. It was also keeping that water usable. Stored water needed protection from contamination. Communities developed practices intended to preserve water quality whenever possible. Although they lacked modern scientific knowledge, practical experience taught valuable lessons. Clean water supported healthy communities. Dirty water created problems. These observations encouraged careful management. Daily life within Maya cities reflected this reality. People interacted constantly with water systems. Reservoirs were important community resources. Their maintenance required effort. Their protection required cooperation. Everyone depended upon them. This dependence helped shape the organization of city life. Public spaces were planned carefully. Important structures occupied central locations. Residential areas spread outward. Movement throughout the city followed established patterns. Order helped maintain efficiency. And efficiency helped support growing populations. What makes Maya cities particularly fascinating is their ability to balance complexity with sustainability. For centuries, some urban centers continued functioning successfully. This required more than impressive architecture. It required practical solutions to everyday problems. The history of sanitation is often hidden within these practical solutions. Visitors admired temples. Rulers celebrated victories. Priests conducted ceremonies. Yet ordinary people continued carrying water, maintaining homes, preparing food, and supporting the systems that made city life possible. Their efforts rarely appear in historical records. Yet without them, the city could not function. The story of sanitation is therefore also a story of ordinary labor. The quiet work performed by countless individuals every day. Work that often goes unnoticed. Work that allows communities to thrive. As Maya cities expanded, new challenges emerged. More residents meant greater demand for resources. Greater demand required better organization. Communities adapted continuously. Knowledge accumulated across generations. Successful practices endured. Unsuccessful ones were abandoned. This process of learning and adaptation helped sustain Maya civilization for centuries. And while their pyramids continue to attract attention today, the hidden systems supporting everyday life deserve admiration as well. For beneath every great city lies a foundation of practical wisdom. Wisdom earned through experience. Wisdom shared across generations. Wisdom that transformed forests into thriving urban centers. In our next chapter, we will step away from the grand overview of Maya cities and enter daily life itself. We will explore what an ordinary day may have looked like for the people who lived there. The markets they visited. The homes they occupied. The routines that shaped their lives. And the quiet practices that helped keep one of the ancient world's most remarkable civilizations functioning day after day. Now that we have explored the great cities of the Maya from a distance, let us slow down and step into daily life itself. Imagine that it is just before sunrise. The tropical forest surrounding the city is still dark. A light mist hangs over the landscape. Birds begin their morning calls. The first rays of sunlight slowly touch the tops of temples and pyramids. Across the city, families are waking. For most people, life does not begin in palaces or temples. It begins at home. A typical Maya household is modest compared to the grand structures that dominate popular imagination. Homes are often built using local materials. Wood, stone, thatch, and clay are carefully assembled to create comfortable living spaces suited to the climate. These homes are practical. They provide shelter from rain and sun. They allow air to circulate during warm days. Inside, daily routines begin. Fires are prepared. Food is gathered. Water containers are checked. Children awaken and prepare for the day ahead. The sounds of conversation gradually spread throughout the neighborhood. Like people everywhere, the Maya began their mornings with ordinary tasks. Many households needed fresh water. Although large reservoirs supplied cities, obtaining water still required effort. Family members often carried containers to and from community water sources. These trips were part of daily life. Not exciting. Not dramatic. Simply necessary. Yet these simple routines connected people directly to the systems that sustained their city. Every container of water represented planning, engineering, community cooperation. Without those systems, urban life would not have been possible. As the morning continues, activity increases. People leave their homes. Some head toward fields outside the city. Others begin work as craftsmen. Potters shape clay. Weavers create textiles. Builders repair structures. Merchants prepare goods for market. The city slowly comes to life. Perhaps nowhere is this more visible than in the marketplace. Markets were among the most important places in Maya society. Here, people exchanged goods, information, and news. Food arrived from surrounding regions. Tools changed hands. Crafts were traded. Travelers shared stories from distant communities. The marketplace was not simply a place of commerce. It was a center of social life. Imagine walking through such a market. You hear conversations in every direction. You see baskets filled with produce. You observe skilled artisans displaying their work. You notice families moving through crowded pathways. The atmosphere is busy but familiar. For many people, these scenes formed part of everyday life. And yet, even here, questions of cleanliness remained important. Large gatherings of people create challenges. Food must be protected. Water must remain usable. Public spaces require maintenance. The success of the market depended upon organization. Without it, daily life would become far more difficult. Throughout the city, countless small tasks helped maintain order. Homes required cleaning. Storage areas required attention. Cooking spaces needed maintenance. Public pathways had to remain accessible. None of these responsibilities were glamorous. But together they supported urban life. This is one reason historians find everyday history so fascinating. Great monuments tell us what civilizations achieved. Daily routines reveal how those achievements were sustained. A pyramid may require years to construct. A city requires effort every single day. The ordinary work of ordinary people often matters more than we realize. As the afternoon approaches, the tropical heat grows stronger. Many activities slow. People seek shade. Work continues, but at a more comfortable pace. Families return home. Meals are prepared. Children play nearby. The rhythms of daily life continue. Water remains central throughout the day. Drinking, cooking, cleaning. The importance of water never disappears. This constant dependence helps explain why Maya societies invested so much effort into water management. A city without reliable water could not survive. Evening eventually arrives. The marketplace quiets. The day's work begins to end. The sky turns golden, then orange, then deep blue. Smoke rises gently from household fires. Families gather once more. Food is shared. Stories are told. Knowledge. As we leave the tropical cities of the Maya behind, our journey continues into central Mexico. Here we encounter one of the most extraordinary cities in the ancient Americas. A city that rose from the waters of a great lake. A city connected by causeways and canals. A city so impressive that many visitors struggled to believe what they were seeing. Its name was Tenochtitlan. Today, the modern city of Mexico City stands upon its former location. Yet centuries ago, Tenochtitlan was the heart of the Aztec world. To understand why this city is important to our story, we must first appreciate its scale. Imagine approaching Tenochtitlan for the very first time. You travel across a long causeway stretching over the surface of Lake Texcoco. Ahead of you rises a vast city. Temples tower above the skyline. White buildings reflect sunlight. Canals crisscross neighborhoods. Thousands upon thousands of people move through streets and marketplaces. For many visitors, the sight was breathtaking. Some compared it to the greatest cities they had ever seen. Others claimed they had never witnessed anything quite like it. The city was home to a population that may have exceeded 200,000 people. For its time, that made it one of the largest urban centers in the world. But with such a large population came enormous challenges. Every day, people needed food. Every day, people needed water. And every day, the city had to remain functional and clean. Managing a village was difficult. Managing a city of this size required extraordinary organization. The Aztecs understood this well. One of the most remarkable features of Tenochtitlan was its relationship with water. Unlike many cities built beside rivers, Tenochtitlan was built within a lake. Canals served as transportation routes. Canoes moved goods throughout the city. Water shaped daily life in countless ways. Yet living among water also created responsibilities. The city needed systems to protect drinking water. It needed methods to manage waste. It needed maintenance on a scale far beyond anything we have discussed so far. Historical accounts suggest that cleanliness was taken seriously. Public spaces were maintained. Streets were kept orderly. Markets were regulated. Community expectations encouraged people to care for their surroundings. This may surprise modern listeners. Popular imagination often assumes that ancient cities were chaotic and unsanitary. Yet Tenochtitlan appears to have been far more organized than many people expect. In fact, some visitors arriving from Europe described the city with admiration. At the time, many European cities struggled with waste management and overcrowding. Compared with some of those cities, Tenochtitlan appeared remarkably orderly. Part of this success came from planning. The city did not grow randomly. Its layout reflected careful organization. Districts served different functions. Canals provided transportation. Public spaces created structure. Movement throughout the city followed established patterns. This organization made daily life more manageable. Imagine beginning your day in Tenochtitlan. The morning sun rises over the lake. Canoes glide quietly across calm water. Merchants prepare goods for market. Families begin their daily routines. Workers travel toward construction projects, workshops, and agricultural areas. The city gradually awakens. Thousands of individual lives combine to create a single functioning community. What makes such a community possible? The answer lies in countless ordinary tasks. Water must be delivered. Food must be transported. Public areas must be maintained. Canals require attention. Pathways require repair. These tasks rarely appear in stories about kings and warriors. Yet they determine whether a city thrives. The marketplace of Tenochtitlan offers another glimpse into urban organization. Some accounts describe enormous markets containing thousands of people. Goods from across the region arrive daily. Food, textiles, tools, pottery, and countless other products changed hands. Maintaining order in such a place required rules and expectations. Without organization, confusion would quickly follow. The Aztecs developed systems that helped large numbers of people live together effectively. These systems extended beyond commerce. They influenced cleanliness. They influenced public behavior. They influenced how the city functioned as a whole. The story of sanitation is therefore not just about waste disposal. It is about organization. It is about cooperation. It is about creating conditions that allow urban life to succeed. As evening approaches, the city begins to slow. The busiest hours of the marketplace pass. Families return home. The sounds of daily work gradually fade. Across the lake, the setting sun paints the water with shades of gold and orange. Canals grow quieter. The great temples cast long shadows. Night settles over one of the most remarkable cities in the ancient world. Yet even while people sleep, the systems supporting city life remain important. Water must remain available. Public spaces must remain functional. The city must be ready for another day. This quiet continuity is what makes Tenochtitlan so fascinating. Behind its grand monuments stood an enormous network of practical knowledge. Knowledge accumulated through generations. Knowledge that helped transform a settlement on a lake into one of history's great urban centers. In our next chapter, we will look even more closely at the methods that helped keep Tenochtitlan functioning. The canals, the collection systems, the daily routines, and the remarkable efforts required to keep such a vast city clean and organized. For beneath the beauty of Tenochtitlan lay one of the most impressive examples of urban management in the ancient Americas. As we continue our journey through ancient America, let us remain in Tenochtitlan for a little longer. This city is simply too remarkable to leave behind just yet. In the previous chapter, we explored its size, its beauty, and the amazement it inspired in visitors. Now we turn our attention to something less obvious. Something hidden beneath the grand temples and bustling marketplaces. The practical systems that help keep the city functioning every single day. When most people think about great cities, they often focus on what can be seen. The monuments, the architecture, the public spaces. Yet cities survive because of countless invisible systems operating quietly in the background. Water systems, transportation networks, maintenance routines, sanitation practices. Without these things, even the most beautiful city would quickly become difficult to live in. Tenochtitlan was no exception. Its location presented both advantages and challenges. Being surrounded by water offered transportation opportunities. Canoes could move goods efficiently. Canals connected different parts of the city. Trade flowed through waterways much as vehicles move through roads today. But water also required careful management. Not all water was suitable for drinking. Not all water could remain clean without effort. The Aztecs understood this reality. Historical evidence suggests that considerable attention was devoted to maintaining the city's infrastructure. This work rarely appears in dramatic historical narratives. No songs were written about maintaining drainage. Few monuments celebrated routine cleaning. Yet these ordinary tasks made extraordinary urban life possible. Imagine waking before sunrise in Tenochtitlan. While much of the city still sleeps, some people have already begun their work. Maintenance never truly stops in a large city. Canals require attention. Public spaces require care. Paths and bridges require inspection. The city depends upon those willing to perform these everyday responsibilities. As daylight spreads across the lake, activity increases. Canoes begin moving through waterways. Merchants transport goods. Workers travel to different districts. The city comes alive. Yet, unlike many cities throughout history, Tenochtitlan appears to have maintained a reputation for order and cleanliness. Accounts written by early observers frequently mention this. Visitors noted organized streets, orderly public spaces, systems that help manage daily life. Of course, no city is perfect. Problems undoubtedly occurred. Yet compared to many urban centers of the same era, Tenochtitlan appears to have been remarkably well managed. One reason may have been the strong emphasis placed upon community responsibility. People understood that maintaining shared spaces benefited everyone. A clean marketplace was more pleasant to visit. A well-maintained canal improved transportation. An organized city supported trade, daily life, and social stability. The canals themselves played an important role. They were more than transportation routes. They formed part of the city's overall infrastructure. Movement through the city often occurred by water. Goods could be transported efficiently. Large populations could be supplied more effectively. This helped reduce some of the challenges that crowded cities often face. Waterways connected neighborhoods. They connected marketplaces. They connected people. In many ways, the canals functioned as the city's lifeblood. The famous chinampas, sometimes called floating gardens, also contributed to urban sustainability. These agricultural areas produced food close to the city itself. Fresh produce could reach markets quickly. The distance between production and consumption remained relatively small. This efficient system supported a large population. Again, we see the importance of practical planning. Great cities depend upon reliable systems. Food systems, water systems, transportation systems, maintenance systems. Each supports the others. Remove one, and difficulties begin to appear. Remove several, and urban life becomes impossible. The people of Tenochtitlan understood this intuitively. Generations of experience taught valuable lessons. Success required organization. Success required cooperation. Success required constant attention to the details of daily life. As the day progresses, the city reaches its busiest hours. Markets fill with activity. Canals carry traffic. Public spaces host gatherings and commerce. Thousands of people move through the urban landscape. To modern eyes, it might appear overwhelming. Yet for those who lived there, it was simply everyday life. A familiar rhythm repeated day after day. Perhaps that is one of the most fascinating aspects of history. The extraordinary often becomes ordinary for those living through it. Residents of Tenochtitlan did not wake each morning thinking they lived in one of the world's great cities. They worried about food, work, family, responsibilities. The same concerns that occupy people today. Their city succeeded not because of occasional moments of greatness. It succeeded because ordinary people consistently performed ordinary tasks. Tasks that accumulated into something remarkable. As evening approaches, the pace of activity begins to slow. The markets gradually quiet. The canals become less crowded. Families return home. The setting sun reflects across the waters of the lake. Golden light dances upon the surface. For a brief moment, the city appears peaceful, calm, almost timeless. Yet tomorrow, the routines will begin again. The maintenance, the transportation, the organization, the countless efforts required to support urban life. And in that quiet repetition lies the true story of sanitation. Not a story of technology alone, but a story of cooperation, of planning, of people working together to create communities where daily life could flourish. Soon, our journey will take us farther south into the mountains of South America. There we will encounter another remarkable civilization, the Inca, a people whose engineering achieved. As we leave behind the lakes and canals of Tenochtitlan, our journey now takes us thousands of kilometers to the south. The landscape changes once again. The warm valleys and tropical forests give way to towering mountains. Sharp peaks rise into the clouds. Deep valleys cut through the rugged terrain. Rivers rush through narrow canyons. The air grows cooler and thinner. We have arrived in the Andes. This is the homeland of the Inca. To modern observers, the achievements of the Inca often seem almost impossible. Their empire stretched across vast distances. Roads crossed mountains. Bridges connected isolated communities. Terraces transformed steep hillsides into productive farmland. And throughout it all, water remained one of the most important resources. The story of toilets and sanitation in the Inca world cannot be separated from the story of engineering. For the Inca were masters of practical problem solving. They lived in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Yet they found ways not merely to survive, but to thrive. Imagine standing in an Inca settlement high in the mountains. The morning sun illuminates distant peaks. Clouds drift through valleys below. Stone buildings stand neatly arranged along carefully planned pathways. Everything seems orderly. Everything appears intentional. Nothing feels random. This attention to planning extended throughout Inca society. Communities were designed with practical needs in mind. Water had to be collected. Water had to be distributed. Water had to be managed carefully. Without reliable systems, life in the mountains would have been far more difficult. One of the most remarkable features of Inca settlements was their use of water channels. These channels directed water where it was needed. Some supplied homes and public areas. Others helped support agriculture. Still others managed excess water during periods of heavy rainfall. The Inca understood something important. Water could be both a friend and a danger. Too little created hardship. Too much created problems. Successful communities learned to control and direct it. Archaeologists continue to study Inca water systems with admiration. Many remain functional even after centuries. Stone channels carved with remarkable precision still guide water along intended paths. The durability of these systems speaks to the skill of their builders. Yet beyond their technical achievement lies something equally fascinating. These systems improved daily life. They made communities cleaner, more organized, more comfortable. The history of sanitation is often hidden within such improvements. When water flows where it should, people rarely think about it. When drainage works properly, it becomes almost invisible. Success often goes unnoticed because problems fail to appear. This was true in the Inca world as well. Much of their engineering was designed to prevent difficulties before they occurred. Rainwater needed somewhere to go. Pathways needed protection from erosion. Living areas needed drainage. Agricultural terraces required careful water management. Each challenge demanded a solution. The solutions accumulated over generations. Knowledge passed from one builder to another. Experience became expertise. Expertise became tradition. Consider the famous city of Machu Picchu. Perched high among mountain ridges, it remains one of the most celebrated archaeological sites in the world. Visitors admire its stone architecture. They marvel at its location. Yet many are unaware of the sophisticated water systems hidden within the city. Channels, fountains, and drainage structures help support daily life. As we continue our journey through the ancient Americas, let us step away from cities, canals, reservoirs, and mountain roads for a moment. Instead, let us focus on something much more personal. The everyday routines of ordinary people. When modern people think about ancient history, they often imagine a world that was constantly dirty. A world without soap. Without running water. Without modern bathrooms. Without the conveniences we take for granted today. Yet the reality was often far more complex. Across the Americas, many cultures placed considerable importance on cleanliness. Not because they understood modern medical science. Not because they had microscopes or laboratories. But because cleanliness simply made life better. A clean home felt more comfortable. Clean clothing lasted longer. Clean water tasted better. And communities that cared for their surroundings often functioned more smoothly. The desire for cleanliness is not a modern invention. It is a very old human instinct. Imagine a typical morning in an ancient village. The sun begins to rise. Families wake and prepare for the day. Water is collected from nearby sources. Meals are prepared. Homes are tidied. The routines may differ from place to place, but certain patterns appear again and again. People value order. People value comfort. People value cleanliness. Throughout much of ancient America, bathing was often an important part of life. The exact methods varied according to geography and culture. Communities living near rivers might bathe regularly in flowing water. Those near lakes and springs often relied upon these resources as well. In warmer regions, access to water made bathing a relatively natural part of daily life. A cool bath could provide relief from heat. It could remove dirt and sweat. It could simply feel refreshing after a long day of work. Even in places where water was less abundant, people still developed methods for maintaining personal cleanliness. Washing hands, cleaning faces, rinsing clothing, brushing away dust and dirt. These simple practices required no advanced technology, only habit. And habits are powerful. A community that teaches cleanliness to its children creates traditions that can last for centuries. Children learn by watching adults. Adults repeat what they learned from earlier generations. Knowledge passes quietly from one person to another. No grand monument records these lessons. Yet they shape everyday life. Clothing also played a role. Garments needed care. Fabric required cleaning. Repairs had to be made. A well-maintained garment could serve a family far longer than one that was neglected. The practical value of cleanliness was easy to observe. People did not need scientific studies to understand that taking care of possessions made them last longer. The same principle applied to homes. Across the Americas, families spent considerable effort maintaining living spaces. Floors were swept. Sleeping areas were organized. Food storage areas were monitored carefully. These tasks may sound ordinary. That is because they are ordinary. But ordinary activities are what make communities function. History often celebrates dramatic moments. Battles, coronations, discoveries. Yet most people throughout history spent their days doing something much simpler. They cared for their homes. They cared for their families. They carried out routines that made life possible. Perhaps that is why everyday history feels so relatable. We may live in different centuries. We may use different tools. Yet many of our daily concerns remain surprisingly familiar. As afternoon arrives, people continue their work. Farmers tend fields. Craftsmen create tools and pottery. Merchants travel between settlements. Children learn skills from parents and elders. Life unfolds according to familiar rhythms. And throughout these activities, cleanliness remains woven into daily routines. Water is used carefully. Homes are maintained. Communities cooperate. The details differ from one culture to another. Yet the underlying goal remains consistent: to create a comfortable and functional environment for daily life. In some regions, steam baths and similar practices became part of community traditions. These spaces served practical purposes. They provided warmth. They encouraged cleanliness. They created opportunities for social interaction. Such traditions remind us that hygiene is not merely about removing dirt. It is also about comfort, health, and community. As evening approaches, people begin returning home. The heat of the day fades. Cooking fires are lit. Families gather together. The day's work slowly comes to an end. Some people wash before resting. Others prepare clothing and tools for tomorrow. The routines vary. But the pattern remains familiar. A day begins with care. A day ends with care. And in between lies the ordinary work of living. What is most striking about these routines is their universality. Across deserts, forests, mountains, and valleys, people developed ways to maintain cleanliness and comfort using the resources available to them. No single solution existed. Every environment required adaptation. Every community found its own path. Yet all shared a common understanding. Life is easier when people care for themselves and their surroundings. It is a simple lesson. Yet it has shaped human history in countless ways. As we prepare for the next chapter, our story moves forward in time. The ancient world we have explored will soon encounter profound change. New arrivals will reach the Americas. New settlements will appear. New sanitation challenges will emerge. And with them will come a very different chapter in the history of toilets, cleanliness, and everyday life. For next, we enter the world of colonial America. A world of frontier towns, wooden buildings, and the humble structure that would become familiar across much of the continent. The outhouse. As we continue our journey, we now move into a period of enormous change. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples across the Americas had developed their own communities, traditions, and solutions to the challenges of daily life. Then new arrivals came from across the Atlantic Ocean. With them came new technologies, new customs, new building styles, and new approaches to sanitation. The world was changing. Slowly at first, then more rapidly with each passing generation. Imagine a small colonial settlement in North America. Unlike the great cities of the Maya or the carefully planned communities of the Pueblo peoples, many frontier settlements began quite modestly. A handful of wooden buildings stood in a clearing. Rough roads connected homes and workshops. Fields stretched beyond the edges of the settlement. The surrounding wilderness seemed endless. Life on the frontier demanded hard work. Every structure had to be built. Every field had to be cleared. Every resource had to be gathered. Survival often depended upon practical skills. In such settlements, sanitation was rarely a grand engineering challenge. Instead, it was a daily necessity handled through simple solutions. Among the most familiar of these solutions was the outhouse. Today, the outhouse is often remembered as a symbol of frontier life. A small building standing apart from the main home. Simple. Functional. Unpretentious. Yet its purpose was important. As settlements grew larger, families needed designated places for waste disposal. Keeping such activities separate from living areas helped maintain cleaner and more comfortable surroundings. The idea itself was not new. Humans had long understood the value of separating waste from daily living spaces. What changed were the specific forms those solutions took. A colonial family might begin the day before sunrise. Fires were lit. Animals were fed. Water was carried from wells or nearby streams. Meals were prepared. Children completed chores. The rhythm of life was demanding. There were few conveniences. Every task required effort. Even obtaining water could consume considerable time and energy. Because water was not available at the turn of a handle, people used it carefully. Every bucket carried from a well represented work. Nothing was wasted unnecessarily. The same practical mindset shaped sanitation. Outhouses were positioned at some distance from homes. Not too far, but far enough to reduce unpleasant conditions. Their design was simple because simplicity worked. Materials were limited. Labor was valuable. Communities focused upon solutions that could be built and maintained efficiently. In many ways, frontier sanitation reflected the realities of frontier life. People relied upon practicality. They used local resources. They adapted to local conditions. A family living in a forested region might build differently than a family living on open plains. Yet the underlying challenges remain the same. How do people live together comfortably? How do they maintain healthy environments? How do they manage the unavoidable realities of daily life? As settlements expanded into towns, these questions became increasingly important. A few isolated homes created relatively few sanitation problems. Hundreds of homes created more. Thousands created even more. Growth brought opportunity. Growth also brought challenges. Throughout history, urbanization has consistently increased the need for organization. The colonial world was no exception. Markets expanded. Trade increased. Roads improved. Populations grew. And with every increase in population, communities needed better systems. The humble outhouse served communities for generations. It was not elegant. It was not technologically advanced. But it represented an important step in the continuing evolution of sanitation. A practical solution to a practical problem. One of many such solutions that have appeared throughout history. What is fascinating is how familiar the underlying story remains. Whether we examine a Pueblo settlement, a Maya city, an Aztec capital, an Inca mountain community, or a colonial frontier town, we encounter the same pattern. People identify a challenge. People develop a solution. People adapt that solution as circumstances change. Civilization advances not only through great inventions. It advances through countless small improvements repeated over time. As evening settles over a colonial settlement, daily work gradually comes to an end. Farm tools are stored. Animals are secured. Families gather inside homes illuminated by firelight and candles. Outside, the settlement grows quiet. The wilderness beyond remains dark and vast. Tomorrow will bring another day of work. Another day of carrying water, preparing meals, maintaining homes, and performing the countless tasks that make community life possible. The people living in these settlements could not know what the future would bring. They could not imagine modern plumbing. They could not imagine underground sewer networks stretching beneath vast cities. They could not imagine bathrooms with running water available at any moment. Yet the foundations of that future were already being laid. Population growth would continue. Cities would expand. New technologies would emerge. And eventually, the simple solutions of earlier generations would give way to increasingly complex systems. The story of sanitation was entering a new chapter. A chapter shaped by industry, by engineering, by urban growth, and by the desire to create cleaner, healthier cities for growing populations. In our next chapter, we will follow that transformation. From wooden outhouses and hand-carried water to the rise of sewers, plumbing, and the modern systems that most people rely upon today. A transformation that would change daily life forever. As we continue our journey, we arrive at a turning point in the history of sanitation. For thousands of years, people have relied upon local solutions. Villages developed their own routines. Cities created their own systems. Families adapted to the environments around them. Water was carried by hand. Waste was managed through methods that varied from one community to another. These approaches often worked reasonably well when populations remained small. But the world was changing. During the 18th and 19th centuries, towns grew larger. Cities expanded rapidly. Trade increased. Industry transformed economies. And with this growth came challenges unlike anything previous generations had experienced. Imagine a growing city during this period. New buildings appear every year. More people arrive seeking work. Roads become busier. Markets become crowded. Neighborhoods spread outward. The energy of growth is everywhere. Yet beneath this progress lies a problem. More people create more demand for water. More demand for water creates greater pressure on existing systems. And greater populations require better ways of managing waste. The old solutions that worked for small settlements often struggled to keep pace. Communities needed something new. At first, improvements appeared gradually. Wells became more organized. Water distribution systems expanded. Public works projects increased. Engineers began studying how cities functioned. They looked for ways to improve efficiency. They sought methods to make urban life healthier and more comfortable. This was not a sudden revolution. It was a long process involving countless experiments, successes, and failures. Throughout history, innovation rarely arrives all at once. Instead, improvements accumulate. One idea leads to another. One invention inspires the next. Generation after generation builds upon earlier knowledge. The development of modern sanitation followed this pattern. As cities expanded, underground infrastructure became increasingly important. Water could no longer be supplied solely through local wells. Growing populations required larger systems. Pipes began carrying water across greater distances. Reservoirs stored supplies for expanding communities. Engineers learned how to move water more effectively. At the same time, attention turned toward waste removal. Large cities faced challenges that small towns rarely encountered. Managing waste for thousands, or even millions, of people required careful planning. New systems emerged. Sewer networks expanded beneath streets. Drainage improved. Public infrastructure became more sophisticated. Most residents rarely saw these systems. That was the point. Successful infrastructure often remains invisible. When water flows properly, people seldom think about pipes. When drainage works well, people rarely notice it. The best systems often disappear into the background of daily life. Yet they remain essential. Modern cities depend upon them every hour of every day. The introduction of indoor plumbing transformed daily routines. For centuries, obtaining water had required effort. People carried buckets. They visited wells. They traveled to streams and springs. Now, increasingly, water could be brought directly into homes. Tasks that once consumed significant time became easier. Daily life changed. Comfort increased. Convenience expanded. The transformation did not occur everywhere at once. Some communities adopted new technologies quickly. Others took longer. Economic conditions varied. Geography influenced development. Yet over time, modern plumbing spread across larger and larger regions. With each passing decade, more people gained access to systems previous generations could scarcely imagine. It is easy to take such conveniences for granted. A modern person turns a handle and clean water appears. Another handle removes waste. The process seems effortless. Yet behind that simplicity lies centuries of accumulated knowledge. engineers, builders, laborers, planners. Countless individuals contributed to the development of these systems. Their work continues today. Water treatment facilities operate around the clock. Maintenance crews inspect infrastructure. Engineers monitor networks. Entire professions exist to ensure that modern sanitation remains reliable. In many ways, the story has come full circle. The technologies have changed dramatically. The challenges remain surprisingly familiar. Communities still need clean water. Communities still need effective waste management. Communities still depend upon cooperation and planning. The scale may be larger. The methods may be more advanced. Yet the underlying goals remain the same. Throughout this documentary, we have visited many different societies. Hunter-gatherers moving across vast landscapes. Pueblo communities in the southwest. Maya cities hidden within tropical forests. The canals of Tenochtitlan. The mountain engineering of the Inca. Colonial frontier settlements. Each developed solutions suited to its circumstances. Each faced practical questions about how people should live together. Each contributed another chapter to the long history of sanitation. Perhaps the most remarkable lesson is how ordinary these concerns are. Every civilization, regardless of time or place, must solve similar problems. People need water. People need shelter. People need safe and comfortable environments. History often focuses on extraordinary events. Yet the foundation of civilization is built upon ordinary needs. And ordinary needs inspire extraordinary ingenuity. As evening settles over the modern world, lights glow across cities and towns. Water flows silently through pipes. Treatment facilities continue their work. Infrastructure operates largely unnoticed. Millions of people go about their daily routines without giving these systems a second thought. That quiet reliability is itself a remarkable achievement. An achievement built upon thousands of years of human experience. Thousands of years of observation, adaptation, innovation, and practical problem solving. In our final chapter, we will step back and reflect upon the entire journey. From ancient villages to modern cities. From simple routines to complex infrastructure. And from the forgotten history of toilets to the broader story of civilization itself. And now, as our journey slowly comes to an end, let us take a moment to reflect. Tonight, we have traveled across thousands of years of history. We have walked through ancient villages. We have visited cities hidden within tropical forests. We have crossed mountain roads high in the Andes. We have glided through the canals of Tenochtitlan. We have stood beside colonial settlements on distant frontiers. And throughout this journey, we have followed an unlikely guide. The humble toilet. At first, it may have seemed like an unusual topic. Perhaps even a strange one. After all, when people think about history, they usually think about great rulers, famous battles, or magnificent monuments. They think about moments that changed the world. Yet sometimes the most ordinary subjects reveal the deepest truths. The history of toilets is really the history of people. It is the history of daily life. The history of practical problems and practical solutions. The history of communities learning how to live together. Again and again, we encountered the same pattern. Different cultures. Different landscapes. Different centuries. Yet similar challenges. People needed water. People needed shelter. People needed food. And people needed ways to maintain clean and comfortable environments. These needs connected all human societies. The Maya and the Inca never met the Pueblo peoples. The builders of Tenochtitlan lived very different lives from colonial settlers. Yet all faced the same basic realities. Every morning began with familiar tasks. Water had to be gathered. Meals had to be prepared. Homes had to be maintained. Communities had to function. Perhaps that is one of the most comforting lessons history offers. Across vast distances and enormous spans of time, people were often more alike than different. They worried about families. They cared for children. They solved problems. They adapted to changing circumstances. They hoped for better futures. The details changed. The human experience remained remarkably familiar. As we explored ancient America, we discovered that sanitation was never simply about waste. It was about organization. It was about cooperation. It was about understanding how communities could thrive. A clean water source helped everyone. A well-maintained pathway helped everyone. A functioning city benefited everyone. Civilization itself depends upon these shared efforts. The grand monuments that survive today often receive the most attention. Tourists admire pyramids. Visitors photograph temples. Travelers marvel at ancient ruins. Yet behind every monument stood countless ordinary people. People carrying water. People cleaning public spaces. People maintaining infrastructure. People performing tasks so ordinary that history rarely recorded them. And yet without them, nothing else would have been possible. This hidden history is perhaps the most fascinating part of all. The invisible work that supports visible achievements. The quiet routines that make great societies possible. The countless small actions that accumulate into something larger. As modern people, we often benefit from systems we rarely notice. Clean water arrives at the turn of a handle. Waste disappears with the press of a lever. Entire networks operate beneath our feet. Pipes, pumps, treatment facilities, infrastructure. Most of the time, we hardly think about them. And perhaps that is a sign of their success. The best systems often become invisible. They quietly support daily life without demanding attention. In that sense, modern sanitation shares something with the ancient systems we have explored. Its purpose is not to be noticed. Its purpose is to work. The people who built reservoirs in Maya cities. The engineers who designed Inca water channels. The workers who maintained the canals of Tenochtitlan. The families who cared for their homes in Pueblo settlements. All were contributing to the same long story. A story that continues today. The technologies have changed. The challenges remain familiar. Communities still require cooperation. Resources still require management. People still depend upon one another. History reminds us that civilization is not built in a single day. It grows slowly, patiently, generation by generation. Each person adds something. A lesson learned. A problem solved. A task completed. A tradition passed forward. Most of these contributions never appear in books. Yet together they shape the world. And perhaps that is what the history of toilets teaches us most clearly. Civilization is not only the story of extraordinary people. It is also the story of ordinary people doing ordinary things. Day after day. Year after year. Century after century. As the night grows quieter, imagine the countless generations we have encountered along the way. The villagers beside rivers. The farmers tending fields. The merchants crossing marketplaces. The builders shaping stone. The families gathering around evening fires. Their days have ended. Their cities have changed. Their worlds have passed into history. Yet their stories remain. Hidden in ruins. Hidden in traditions. Hidden in the practical solutions they left behind. And now, our own journey comes to a close. The canals grow still. The mountain paths fade into darkness. The marketplaces fall silent. The fires burn low. The ancient cities sleep beneath the stars. Thank you for joining this gentle exploration of the forgotten history of toilets in ancient America. As you settle deeper into comfort and rest, allow these distant places to drift softly into the background. The villages. The forests. The mountains. The lakes. The people who lived there long ago. Their work is finished. Their stories have been told. And now, it is time for sleep. Good night.